Good day, folks. I'm on the Edinburgh bus tours today. I'm going to show you around Edinburgh, points of interest, and we have a guide here and he'll be telling us all about the places that we're going to be passing and visiting. Okay? So here we go, folks. We're kicking off now.
Edinburgh bus tour. My name's John, I'll be your guide on the tour, and our driver is also called John, and the tour will take about an hour. John's one of our most experienced drivers. When I say it'll take about an hour, it'll take about an hour and 10 minutes. It won't take less than an hour, that's for certain, to get round. This is St Andrew's Square, which is the east end of the first part of Edinburgh New Town. The first part of the New Town was built between 1767 and 1830. All this land where the new towns are built was parkland, it was common grazing land, it was country estates. We had to build the new towns, we had to leave the old town. The old town was the most overcrowded slum in the world, basically, the known world, from about the 17th century on. Now, in the late 17th century, some of the buildings in the old town were 14 stories tall. That was because we were restricted to building in the old town on the line that runs the Royal Mile today, from the castle down to the palace. The Castle Rock, 350 million years old, basalt dolomite, a volcanic plug. A glacier hit it about 12,000 years ago, split in two and carved out from west to east the valleys on which Edinburgh stands. So it left a crag and a tail, the crag being the Castle Rock and the tail being what we now call the Royal Mile. So everything was built along that crag. We built city walls around it to protect it. But building a city wall around it effectively meant that you couldn't develop. You couldn't go to the sides, you couldn't go to the back, you couldn't go to the front, you had to go up. So 14-story tall buildings at the end of the 17th century and right through until the 18th century. So this was really, really needed. We had all this space, all this land to work with. This square, built in the 1770s, and it became very quickly the financial centre, not just for Edinburgh, but for Scotland, and we have a really significant financial building there on your left-hand side. Number 36 St Andrew's Square, that's Dundas House, which was built for a businessman, Lawrence Dundas, as a family home. He died 7 years later, his son inherited the building, didn't like it, so he sold it to the government's Customs and Excise Department. They then sold it to the Royal Bank of Scotland in the 1820s for £30,000. Today, about 3 million, that 30,000 would translate to about 3 million. If you're up this way, during banking hours, go in and have a look. They encourage people to go in and have a look. It's a magnificent building, inside and out. The banking hall in there is something you will never forget. This building on the left used to be a bank as well, the British Linen Bank. It's about to become the Gleneagles Townhouse Hotel, famous Gleneagles Hotel from Auchterarder up in Perthshire. And this is what the square has become about: high-end shopping, lovely hotels, and eating and drinking. Including last November, Gordon Ramsay opened his Bread Street restaurant there on the left. How on earth did we cope in Edinburgh before we had a Gordon Ramsay restaurant? If we knew the chance to buy beef Wellington for £50, or stew and a cake, as somebody once described it. It's my favourite description of any food anywhere in the world. Coming down to Princess Street on the other side of the road, we have the Scott Monument, 200 feet and 6 inches tall, 288 steps to the top, erected to the memory of Sir Walter Scott. Now, Walter Scott was an amazing man. Love him or loathe him. He was a writer, lawyer, judge, poet, inventor. He invented the myth of the noble romantic Highlands. He invented the myth of the noble romantic Highlander. To all intents and purposes, he invented modern Highland dress. And he came up with the Scottish tourism industry. His books had a huge influence throughout the known world. People wanted to come to this mythological, romanticised country which didn't exist. but they came to see it, and they stayed, and they came back and back and back. Thank goodness. Scott got into financial difficulties in the 19th century. He allowed his publisher to invest all of his money. The publisher invested everything in one harvest, which failed. Scott was left with debts in today's money of about £28 million. He refused to declare himself bankrupt. He said he would pay every penny back. He died 7 years later, exhausted, with the debt almost cleared. They sold the copyrights on his work that settled the debt, but there was a huge outpouring of respect for Scott because of the honourable way he behaved. So, between 1840 and 1844, they erected the wonderful monument. Now here on your left-hand side, and it's the second largest monument to a writer anywhere in the world, the largest being in Cuba. On the left-hand side, the two galleries on the back is the Scottish National Gallery, 1856, by William Henry Playfair. This gallery in front of it is the Royal Scottish Academy, also by William Henry Playfair. On the left-hand side, the West Princes Street Gardens. Well, the gardens have been public since 1876, but in 1850, when they were still private, the Reverend Thomas Guthrie petitioned on behalf of the Society of the Scottish Association for the Suppression of Public Drunkenness to open these gardens to the public, so working men would have somewhere to go for recreation other than the pubs. Great idea, they said, when they did on Christmas Day, New Year's Day. It's a tiny, tiny church, and it holds about 25 people. It's still a church, and it's available for weddings, christenings, and funerals, as indeed am I. If you get married up there in uniform, it's absolutely free if you're in the military. Of course, there are terms and conditions attached to that. On your left-hand side, this is St Cuthbert's Church, and it's the oldest Christian religious site in Edinburgh. There's been a church there for 1400 years, give or take. This church is obviously not 1400 years old. It's a 19th century church with an 18th century spire and steeple. It does, on the inside, well, I suppose on the outside, because it's a window, have the most magnificent stained glass window, which was donated to the church by a man called Louis Comfort Tiffany of the Tiffany Glass and Jewellery Company of New York. He was in Edinburgh on the Grand Tour of Europe in the 19th century. He visited St Cuthbert's. He saw they had one plain window, so he commissioned, designed, paid for and installed a beautiful stained glass window of David going off to face Goliath. All the churches in the centre of town, they're worth going in for a look. They really are important architecturally. They're free. Obviously they'd like you to leave a donation. You don't have to. This church on the left is St John's Episcopal Church. Has a big connection with Joan Baez, the American folk singer. Her grandfather was a clergyman here. Joan Baez's mother was from Edinburgh. Her father, of course, was Mexican. Now we're going to turn up to our left here and into Lothian Road. There are 13 bus stops on the tour. I'll do my best to remember them and announce them. Now if you want to leave the bus at any of the bus stops, if you're on the top deck, wave at me, I'll tell John. If you're on the bottom deck, ring the bell and John will stop the bus. Anyone for bus stop number 2, which is here for the West End? No one on the top deck for the West End, John. Thank you very much. On your left-hand side here, we've got St Cuthbert's Churchyard. Now, there are some very famous people buried in St Cuthbert's Churchyard. Charles Darwin is buried in there. Not that Charles Darwin. His uncle, who came to Edinburgh as a student and died at the age of 19. But the famous Charles Darwin also studied medicine at Edinburgh University. I changed his course after about 6 months when he found a sight of blood made him faint. Right, coming up, Lothian Road, and I said that St Andrew's Square was the financial district. Well, it's now here, and they've done it really well. Modern architecture in Edinburgh has always had a bit of a shaky relationship, but these buildings, really, really attractive. They're a great scale. They don't dwarf the area. It's a nice place to have a walk through. They've put in some nice pubs and restaurants and cafes and shops within the financial district, and they've just done it really, really well. And it's really nice to see that has happened. This area, apart from being the financial district, is one of the main entertainment areas in Edinburgh. We've got a selection of cinemas and theatres in this area. Within a 10-minute walk of here, you've got 8 different theatres and about 5 or 6 different cinema screens. And also, we have the Premier Concert Hall in Edinburgh, which is the Usher Hall, and that's coming up on your left-hand side, gifted to the city by Andrew Usher, who was a distiller. He gave it to the city in 1914. That's it there. Usher's Green Striped Whiskey was his product. The Usher family were also brewers, and in the 1970s they inflicted some of the worst beer ever made in Scotland on the population. Anyway, behind that is the Royal Lyceum Theatre on the right hand side, and on the left hand side the Travers Theatre, which is really a new writing theatre. Here on your right hand side, Film House, 3-screen art house, independent cinema. Woody Allen used to premiere all of his films in there at the Edinburgh International Film Festival. Now turning to our left into Bread Street, and there's nominative determinism at work here. The bakers were moved to this street because of the risk of fire from their ovens becoming too hot. Now at the top of the hill here, the traffic lights, that's called Main Point, M-A-I-N, and that's an old Scottish word for flour. And turning to our left into Spittle Street on your right hand side were the nicest little pubs in Edinburgh, the Blue Blazer. And coming up to bus stop number 3 at the foot of the Castle Hill. This is Johnson Terrace. Yes, this isn't for the castle. You want this one? Great. Yeah. Yes, we would like this bus stop. Thank you very much, John. And John will be pulling into this bus stop just in a second. If you just keep your seats just now, just for your safety on the stairs. We've hit anybody to be injured on the bus because the paperwork is just ridiculous. I sympathise. Oh right, okay. Aye. You can all just pull it straight down. We'll just cut over the middle line. Goodbye. Have a lovely evening. You live in the bus as well?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a lovely evening. Bye bye. Well, the Castle Rock, as I was saying when we were at St Andrew's Square, is 350 million years old basalt dolerite. Would have flowed all the way across here and down about 40 to 50 feet into the grass market on your right hand side. So, hello. In the 1830s, this street, Johnson Terrace, going up the hill, was blasted and hacked through the Castle Rock. Hello. To form a link between the newly created new town and, of course, the old town where we're heading at the top of the hill. Now coming up Johnson Terrace, on your right hand side through the trees, you'll see there's a red building set back from the trees on the other side of the road with lots of windows and a central arch. That is ECA, Edinburgh College of Art. Sean Connery, the Edinburgh-born actor, he was born less than a mile from this building, and when he was a starving young actor, he would pose in there for life drawing classes. When he became famous, he tried to buy the drawings back, and the art school said, "No, it's okay, Sean, we'll keep them." Yes. Up on your left-hand side, the Castle Esplanade. Great views from up there. except they're putting up 8,800 temporary seats for the summer concerts and military tattoo. So the views are rather going to be gone until about October. But still worth looking up onto the Esplanade. Right, coming up to the top of Johnson Terrace, and on your left-hand side, the tall spire is on St John's Highland Tolbooth Church. St John's was the Gaelic-speaking church in Edinburgh. It's now the hub for Edinburgh International Festival. It's one of my favourite buildings in Scotland, designed by James Gillespie Graham and Augustus Pugin. It is a magnificent building. Sadly, it hasn't really reopened since the lockdown. Hopefully it'll open fully in August for the festival. Up on your left is Castle Hill, and Castle Hill leads, of course, up to Edinburgh Castle. And we're coming to bus stop number 4 of the castle and the rest of the Royal Mile. And yes, we do have people for this stop. Thank you very much, John. And we will be stopping at bus stop number 4. It's just down the hill here. It's very quiet, Castle Hill, going up to the castle at the moment. And if we could persuade people not to park in bus stops, we'd all get on an awful lot quicker. And this is bus stop number 4, and when John stops the bus, then you can safely leave. Thank you very much for coming on the tour. Have a lovely, lovely evening in Edinburgh. We'll get a bus here every 15 minutes until about 6:15. Thank you. This is the bus stop. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Now, we're in the Royal Mile. Looking down the hill, you're looking down 1,000 years of history. It's tempting to think that it's always been one long, continuous, open street. Now, I was saying this is where Edinburgh was built, along this ridge. It's only been continuous and open since the 19th century. There's 5 streets that make up the Royal Mile, and until the 19th century, between the different streets there were city walls, there were buildings, and in one case, down at the Cannon Gate, there was a city wall, a gate, and fields to break up the 5 streets. And the 5 streets are Castle Hill behind us, the Len Market where we're sitting, ahead of us the High Street, below the High Street the Cannon Gate, below the Cannon Gate the Abbey Strand, which leads into the Palace and the Abbey. If you're going to walk the Royal Mile, do start at this end and walk down. Don't start at the bottom and walk up. It's a much steeper hill than it looks, and it's not a mile. A standard mile is 1,760 yards. I looked that up, it's 1.6 kilometres. This is an old Scottish mile, which is 1,984 yards, so it's 1.8 kilometres. So it's longer than it says it's going to be, and it's steeper than it looks. So start at this end and walk down. Don't start at the bottom and walk up. One of the good things about starting at this end and walking down, it's a real pity up here because we've got some really good shops in this area, but I'm sure you can determine which ones are the really good shops and which ones really aren't. Hello. Hello, nice to see you. Hi. Hello. Now these shops here, they're fine if you want to buy, hello, if you want to buy fridge magnets, if you want to buy postcards, hello. Then why not go to these shops? If you want to buy anything Scottish, like tartan or cashmere or things like that, hello. Well, if you take your map, do you have one of these? Right. On the opposite side of the bus routes, there's a whole list of discounts that you get with your bus ticket. Before you buy anything Scottish, have a look at Lemanes and Patterson, L-O-M-A-N-E-S and Patterson. You've paid for the discounts, you may as well get them. And if it's cheaper anywhere, let's just go and get it somewhere else. But it's always worth having a look somewhere like that rather than buying stuff from these shops here. Anyway, the church on the other side here is St Giles High Church. We often call it St Giles Cathedral, but it isn't a cathedral. It was a cathedral twice in the 17th century, once during the reign of Charles I, then during the reign of Charles II. But since then, and before that, it was a Reformed church. The Reformation happened in Scotland in the 1560s. It doesn't have a bishop's seat, doesn't have a bishop, so it can't be a cathedral, so we sometimes call it that by mistake. Hello. Hi. The tower on St Giles is 14th century, and the crown spire on top of the tower with the famous golden cockerel weather vane on top is 15th century. The exterior of St Giles is mostly after 1824. In 1824, Edinburgh suffered the last great fire of Edinburgh. It burned for 5 days. From St Giles down the hill to that next spire you can see, which at that time was made of wood, lined with lead. The wood caught fire, the lead melted and ran in burning rivers down every hill it possibly could, setting fire to everything it touched. Hello. It would have burned for more than 5 days, but 2 months before the Great Fire, Edinburgh had established the world's first municipal fire service under the command of a 24-year-old called James Braidwood. Braidwood left Edinburgh and established the London Fire Service, and he died at the Tooley Street fire in London's Dockyard in 1860. Now we're going to turn to our right here and out of the Royal Mile. We will be in the Royal Mile later in the tour. We'll be joining it at the bottom of, we'll be joining it in the middle of the High Street and going all the way down the Cowgate to the Abbey Strand at the bottom, which leads into the palace. Turning to our right, we'll be on George IV Bridge. Now, because Edinburgh is built of valleys and hills, they had to build 6 great bridges between 1763 and 1833 to accommodate the massive and rapid expansion of Edinburgh. And this is one of the bridges, and it doesn't look like a bridge. You'll see when we get onto it. Only one of them really looks like a bridge, and that's the Dean Bridge, which we won't be going anywhere near. But we'll turn into George IV Bridge, and that will take us up to the University of Edinburgh's main area. Now, turning up to our right-hand side here. Well done, John. Here's a tip for you on your right-hand side. If you ever want to move to Edinburgh, invest in scaffolding. You cannot possibly go wrong. On your left-hand side is the National Library of Scotland, magnificent building, inside and out, great cafe inside. On your right-hand side here is the Central Library of Edinburgh, which was gifted to the city by Andrew Carnegie, the Scottish-born American student. On the left, you can see that we are in fact on a bridge. But we'll be coming up to the university, and it's behind that church in the distance. We've been around that church twice, but this is the hub, which will take us to 2 different parts of the old town we want to be in. The church opened in 1846 as the New North Free Church, designed by a man called Thomas Hamilton. It closed as a church. The university acquired the building. They didn't know what to do with it. They were using it to store chairs. So they gave it to the Student Drama Association, and they turned it into a magnificent little 91-seat theatre. And for many, many, many decades, it was the only all-student-run theatre in the world. It still is. It's called the Bedlam Theatre, because the church was built on or very near the site of the Bedlam Mental Asylum, the Bethlehem Hospital, where for a few pennies for entertainment you could go and stare at the inmates. On your right hand side That old statue of a dog, here you're right, was Greyfriars Bobby, who slept on his owner John Gray's grave up that lane in the churchyard from 1858 to 1872. We'll see him again in a couple of minutes' time. Right, coming into the university, I won't mention all the buildings first time round, because as I say, we go round here twice. These modern buildings, very pleasant, put up by the university. Behind them, some of the worst modern architecture in Scotland put up by the university in the 1950s and 60s. As we turn on the left-hand side, it says Bristol Square and Tedious Place. That's the McEwen Hall, 52 at the university, by the McEwen crime family. It's only fair given the amount of money Edinburgh students have gifted to McEwens over the years. On the left-hand side, the old medical school. Edinburgh has been a major medical teaching centre since 1505, establishment in the old college of Edinburgh. This medical school ceased to be a medical school 20 years ago when the next to Edinburgh, the royal family of Edinburgh moved to a new site, the medical school moved to follow it. Now this building was one of the most impressive domestic Gothic buildings in Europe. It was the largest hospital in the world at one time from the 1870s. He cleaned it and carried it to a brand new Dr. Lloyd's on the right-hand side is George Heriot's School. George Heriot's School was built with money left by George Heriot, who was goldsmith to James VI and his wife Queen Anne of Denmark. Now people say that this school is the inspiration for Hogwarts. J.K. Rowling lives in Edinburgh and she wrote the books and she says it's not. Right. And we've got more J.K. Rowling coming up. Now on your left-hand side, these are the last three medical buildings in this area. All medical buildings. The Lauriston building, which does fantastic work for students. The headquarters of the Scottish Blood Donor Service. On the left there is the Blood Service. And this little sandstone building on the left is the Chalmers Hospital. Now George Chalmers, George Chalmers was a plumber and he gifted this hospital to the city in the 1860s. He made a fortune for plumbing. His only stipulation was that one bed must always be kept open, empty and free, just in case a plumber ever needed hospital treatment. How wonderful is that? It's now a little clinic, health clinic for the National Health Service. We're coming to the area where Burke and Hare lived. William Burke and William Hare, they were two Irishmen who came to Edinburgh in the 1820s to work on the digging of the Union Canal. They then found another way to make money. They murdered no fewer than 17 people and possibly as many as 30 and sold their bodies to an anatomist, Robert Knox, at the university. Arrested, Hare testified against Burke and was freed. Nothing happened to Knox. William Burke was hanged in the Lawn Market in January 1829 in front of a crowd of between 25 and 40,000 people. No Netflix then. Edinburgh needed a constant supply of fresh corpses for teaching, but also there was an entertainment called Teatro Anatomico where people would pay lots of money to watch an anatomist dissect a fresh corpse. So people weren't above digging corpses up, fresh corpses. But some people say, oh, Burke and Hare, they were grave robbers. They were never grave robbers. They were murderers. And they lived just up to the left as we go into this junction here. If you look up to the left when you come out into the middle of the road there, you'll see there's a grey and cream building up the top.
So that's us, folks. I hope you enjoyed the Edinburgh bus tour and the summer edition, and saw a few things there and possibly received a lot of information there that was very historical. So signing out, folks. Hope to see you all on the next journey. TCSS, take care, stay safe. Bye for now.